All set? Okay. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Since our last meeting, we've lost 3 firefighters and 24 police officers to the line of duty. Also, recently we've lost Chief Blanchard, who served our fire district from 1958 to 1978, in addition to fire family member Vaughn Freeman.
Thank you. Please be seated. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Probably a little bit more difficult to see who's talking unless we hold our mics up to our face when we do decide to speak. It'll help out. Today we have a special meeting. We're going to begin with our badge pinning. Chief Troutwine, would you like to start the festivities?
Absolutely. Thank you, Board Chair Soto and board members and family and friends out in the audience today. I don't know, I'm coming up on a year being here, and this is the most people that have ever come to a board meeting that I've been here, which I hear is a good thing. Now, I'm sure you were coming to hear the board meeting, right? So, no, we do. We have a promotion that we were able to make to Matt Fisher. Matt, why don't you stand up, because I'm going to say a few words. You can face the board. Yeah, there we go. You can stand back. Social distancing, Matt. So, Matt, I want to say a few words about Matt, and then we're going to go ahead and he's going to say who he'd like to pin his badge, usually a family member. I know he's got a plan. And then I will swear him in as our fire engineer, and then everyone can go about their very important business. So, Matt here came to our fire district as a reserve firefighter EMT back in 2003. And he came on full-time here with our district in 2005. And between the years of 2014 and 17, he was an acting engineer EMT. Also, he's achieved being a village captain and engineer, which was quite a bit of training and completing the task book and really meeting the minimum qualifications for those ranks. And then subsequently, he still remained an acting engineer, and now we were able to promote him to full engineer. So his prior experience was in construction and electrical worker prior to the Sedona Fire District. And that's a great background to have as a firefighter. Some kind of a construction background, electrical engineering, those are really good things, and so he brings a lot of talent to us, which we appreciate. He had a couple of special commendations. In 2008, a unit citation award for a EPS helicopter incident that he was a part of and responded to. Also, another unit citation in 2014 where was related to our Slide Rock fire response. So, Matt, he did graduate from Lake Havasu High School. Woo-hoo. And he carries an associate's degree in fire science from Yavapai College. And also, just as a note, Matt does serve as an instructor. He has from 2015 with the Yavapai College Fire Academy, which is another important job for a firefighter, being able to mentor and teach younger firefighters how to get on the job and how to improve. So having said all of that about this incredible person, it was really easy promotion to make. So congratulations to Matt, and now we will pin his badge. So Matt, if you want to pin your badge here, we'll have Everett removing my old badge, Rowdy handing my badge over and getting the new one, and Jayson pinning the new one on. Sounds good. Turn towards me. Raise your right hand. I, state your name. I, Matt Fisher, do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution and laws. Of the state of Arizona. That I will bear true faith. And allegiance to the same. And defend them against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. And that I will faithfully and impartially. Discharge the duties of the office of. Fire engineer. Of the Sedona Fire District. According to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations. Would you like to say a word, maybe one or two words? As many as you like. Here, we can put on the recording too. Good. Sure you're not nice.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I've been working as a firefighter for 15 years, and this is an honor. It's been super exciting to actually get promoted, and I'm not stopping. You'll see me on the captain test too.
All right.
Get promoted before.
Thank you, Matt and family. Thank you.
Chief, if we can, just for a moment, is there any of the board members that would like to say a word to Matt? Starting with Gene, or I'm going around the horn.
Matt?
Here, Gene McCarthy. You have already embarked on a tremendous career, and your family knows it. And your friends and those assembled, they respect what you and others do, and so do we as a board. Good luck.
Thank you.
Joy.
Hey Matt, Joy Moore here. Known you for a long time, watched you go climb up the ranks, and I could not be more proud of you, and your sons pinning your badges like literally made me just tear up, and I'm just so happy for you and your whole family, and you deserve everything that you have, and I know that you're going to even go higher, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Al?
Al Camillo here, and Matt, I'm honored to be in the same room with you as you are so singled out and promoted to engineer. I have this made today a special day. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Corey?
Well, congratulations, Matt. I just think it's an honor to have you on the team at SFD, and just judging by this wonderful family of yours, I know that you're a great dad, and that you bring all your skills and dedication to your work. So congratulations, and yeah, we'll see what you do in a few more years.
Thank you.
Lastly, Matt, congratulations again. They say the engineer's position is probably the most coveted spot in the fire service, and I truly think it is. There's officers here that probably envy the spot you're in, because at that point in time, as you are right now, you only have one person to answer to, and that's your captain while you're on duty. And you know, your responsibilities also increase now, because you're you're basically going to be responsible for everybody on that rig and getting us there and getting us home safely. But sometimes we forget to thank those who supported you. And I'd like to give a little shout out of thanks to the family who supported you along the way. Sometimes you had to miss him on a weekend or a birthday because he was studying, but you know, it all pays off. And again, congratulations to the whole bunch. And I think the Sedona Fire District is going to be the benefactor of your new skill set. So thank you very much. Okay, why don't we take about a 5-minute recess? You guys can take some pictures if you'd like, or stay for the rest of the meeting. Okay, with that being the case, our guests are now out of the room. We can continue on with our open meeting. And next item up on the agenda is the presentation of awards, staff recognition. Chief Trotwine.
Thank you, Chairman. So we do have another award we'd like to acknowledge tonight to Mike Sheehan, our fire mechanic, who has served now for 10 years, which is kind of a milestone in the fire service when you hit that 10-year mark. You know, I think maybe one day you could be called a veteran, but 10 years on the job, I think you definitely are. And Mike has served very well as one of our fire mechanics. So he started his employment with the Sedona Fire District in 2010 as a temporary fire mechanic. In 2012, he was promoted to full-time fire mechanic. And then in 2016, we had our fleet supervisor retire, and Mike really took on that job also, you know, as we kind of changed and evolved. So he took quite a bit of responsibility on the last few years, and and he's worked very hard, and he does an outstanding job for us. Prior to his experience here with us, from 1998 to 2010, he worked for a company called Glazier, and then he has a couple of awards we'd like to, in special accommodation, we'd like to acknowledge. In 2014, he did receive a unit citation award for the Slide Rock Fire Response, and then also in 2018, he was Support Services Employee of the Year. And Mike graduated from Mingus High School here locally, and he also graduated in 2003 from the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. So tonight we acknowledge and thank Mike Sheehan for 10 years of service.
All right, a round of applause for that. And I'd like to thank Mike for his service also, being in support services. Sometimes we forget how important those guys really are, especially when your apparatus flutters or a piece of equipment isn't quite working the way it's supposed to. You know, you rely heavily on those in support services, and Mike is that guy. So congratulations to Mike. Okay.
If I could, excuse me, Chair Board, if I could just interrupt for 1 minute too while we're on the subject of awards. So I know we, back in February, March, we had nominated various employees for the awards that we like to acknowledge throughout the year. And then obviously there in mid-March, we turned the corner as a world really with this pandemic, and we had to really slow the brakes down on our public meetings and acknowledgments. And, you know, here we are obviously socially distancing and wearing masks and, you know, making sure that we use a lot of hand sanitizer. So our plan was kind of, we would get back acknowledgement of those awards back here in July, hoping that the environment would have improved. Well, obviously the environment's not improved. So we're going to move forward just as a heads up in August of acknowledging those employees, and then we'll share with you also just several special things that we're going to do as follow-up to that over the next couple months. So I want to just sit for a minute and let everyone know we're going to move that forward and with our various protocols, but just wanted to know we have some really good working employees here, and we are going to camp a little next month and acknowledge that. And then, like I said, we'll do several follow-up things that hopefully will make them feel special for the great job that they're doing. Thank you.
Okay, super. I was hoping that didn't get pushed back too far, so good. Okay, next item on the agenda is our regular business. I don't think we have any public speakers who choose to speak. Nope. Okay, we'll move forward with that. Our consent agenda, For this month, 2 items on the consent agenda is the June 16, 2020 regular meeting minutes and the fiscal year 2021 pay scale corrections. And with that, I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Next up on the agenda is the financial report and updates from our Finance Director, Gabe Boldra, who is presenting via telephone. Gabe, you're on.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I am going to share the PowerPoint with you guys. Can everybody see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Perfect. And how's my audio? I heard I got some feedback that the audio was a bit choppy last month, so I want to make sure everybody can hear me okay.
Better.
Much better.
It is better.
Awesome. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening almost. I apologize. I was really hoping to be there in person, but unfortunately this COVID stuff is still running pretty rampant, and last month I got exposed when I went to a board meeting, so gonna kind of take it easy. Fortunately, I didn't get it, but made us, from a company standpoint, just kind of hold off a little bit on traveling still. So hopefully next month I'll get to see you guys in person. But with that, we obviously, with the June financial report, we ended the fiscal year. So now, you know, from a finance standpoint, we're focused on getting the year-end closed out, all the audit adjustments prepared. So next month, after the board makes a decision on auditor, we can get them engaged and get moving forward on the year-end audit. So starting off on the month of June, we did see, you know, our property tax revenue came in at $139,762. Our budget for the month was $217,000, so we were $78,000 under budget, and I'll talk about kind of property taxes when we get to year-to-date numbers. Non-tax levy revenue came in at $226,248. That was $16,000 over what we budgeted for the month, and the biggest reason we saw that variance was our interest income was pretty high for the month of June. We actually brought in $32,000 in interest earnings compared to a budgeted of $4,000. I will point out we did have a significant number of deployments for the month of June, but at the time that we prepared the financial reports, that billing wasn't ready. So we will come back to you with kind of what our wildland revenue was for the month of June after those billings are completed and the financials have been updated. On the expense side, total expenses year to date, for June are $1,166,000. We were under budget for the month by $53,656. And you can see on all of our major categories, we were under budget with the exception of buildings and land and vehicles and equipment. I just want to kind of highlight why we saw a variance in those two items. Under buildings and land, it was primarily due to some station grill purchases that occurred. And then on vehicles and equipment, there was, you know, basically some year-end buying on some gym equipment, some saws and some hoses and nozzles and stuff that threw off that variance for vehicles and equipment. However, when we get to year-to-date, you'll see all of those categories were under budget from a year-to-date standpoint. So on year-to-date, our total revenue was $18,468,000. We were $800,000 over budget. The majority of that being our non-levy revenues, specifically our wildland revenues for the year, as well as I have to say, ambulance billing has really kind of stepped up towards the end of the year and really outperformed. Not only are we outperforming from a volume standpoint, but we're outperforming from a collection standpoint. So those numbers are really made up predominantly of ambulance revenue and wildland revenue. I will point out, though, our property tax collection was down. We didn't collect $189,000 of what we budgeted, and I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing that average percentage of collection, or I should say delinquency, around the state. Some districts I'm seeing actually collected 100% this year that normally do collect 100%, and so I think that's very possibly a side effect of this COVID. And so while we didn't collect it now, we will eventually collect it. Because those delinquencies, if they don't end up getting paid by the homeowner, those tax liens basically get sold off, and the county collects that money. So we will see it, but it does add a point of caution, as we go forward, that we are starting to see some revenue implications from this potentially. Moving on our expenses, we did really well. We ended the year at $14.9 million in total expenses, which is $1.1 million under what we budgeted. Personnel being the largest driving factor on that. But as you can see, this last half of the year not having travel and training and people going out on vacation on overtime is really where we saw kind of a lot of that offset. And so fortunately, although there was a dip in the revenue side, we didn't also have the same amount of outlay that we probably would have normally had towards the second half of the fiscal year. Percentage of budget, so we should be at basically 100%, but that savings or that amount under budget, we saved 7% of last year's budget. Percentage of expenses, personnel was at 83%, operations was at 8%, communication at 6%, and managerial was at 3%. And then finally, cash position year over year, we ended the year at $11.2 million in total cash on hand compared to $8.9 million the prior year. Our other assets did increase from $20,300,000 to $20,900,000. A large part of that is due to capital asset investment. And then you can see our total liabilities went from $27.6 million to $27.1 million. And with that, the only other thing I want to add is, Chief talked about, looking at our kind of year-end carryover balance, so to speak, and I find and identify projects or items that could be, those monies could be utilized for that weren't in the normal budget process. And while we're still working on kind of closing year-end and coming to what that exact number is, I've got that number looking like it's going to be around 1.1 million in carryover. So get great fiscal year despite some of the challenges, and be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Do we have any questions for Gabe?
I have one. Gabe, hi, it's Corey.
Yes.
With this tax deficiencies or non-payments,
Yes.
What is the turnaround time when you mentioned that ultimately it's collected because the state takes over the home and sells it? But how much time do people have before that happens, and how much time that means do we have before we see that money? So
I apologize. I don't know specifically what Yavapai or Coconino do. I do know a couple other counties because this question has come up there. And it's usually within 12 months of delinquency. The state basically sells the tax lien. And so they're not taking over the property, so we don't have to go through a foreclosure, but the state takes that tax bill and sells the tax lien to an investor. And so, but also, Mrs. Cooperman, we could also collect those monies when people just get caught up on their property taxes and make that payment just on their own. So I would say worst case, you look at, 12 to 18 months. But best case, people get a couple months behind and get caught back up.
Nice. Thank you, Gabe.
You're welcome.
No, Gabe, I just wanted to get a clarification on your slide that you talked about fiscal year to date, budget to actual. You use the term over budget, and you use that term over budget. Initially, it always sends a little bit of a shudder down your spine when you say that. But in this case, it happens to be under revenue, and we brought in more revenue than we anticipated or budgeted for. And I just want to make that clarification and confirm that that's correct. Is that correct?
Yes, that's where we want to be over budget.
Right. But like I said, it does have a negative connotation that we spent too much. But
Yeah.
in that case, we were in a good position as you illustrated on your slide. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other points or questions for Gabe?
No, Corey answered.
Okay. Then with that being said, and that was the total presentation for the month of June, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll need a motion to approve the June's financials.
Motion to approve June financials.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The finances for June have been approved. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Chief's report. Chief Trotwine.
Yes, thank you. So we'll walk through the chief's report, and I'm going to have my division report out as norm over the Zoom, hopefully if we have good quality. The only one who I don't believe is present tonight is John Davis, and I will cover his. So here again is our incident summary for year-to-date from January. You can see 2020 compared to 2019, our number of calls is slightly down, although as you can see in May and June, how busy we have been has completely picked up. And really this is interesting, we talk about these slides and really they reflect trends. Well, you can see when everyone in the community adjusted for COVID was, February, you could see how the call volume dropped with telemedicine and other various approaches. And then May, you can see as the state opened and the area opened, now all of a sudden our calls are back up again. And I know the weekends, if you're around town on the weekend, you'll see that traffic and you'll see the busyness and the amount of people. Also, Oak Creek Canyon, when you go up there on the weekend, stand by, there's a lot of people up there. So I think this really does reflect what's happening out there. And we're going to probably see July and August just as busy as June. The slide on our 90th percentile. So I know the last couple of meetings we talked about what an outlier is. So I do want to talk about an adjustment that we're going to make. And we actually did for the June data. So an outlier would be when we look at in this case, our 90th percentile for our total reflex response time, a response that's way outside of the normal, right? So it's important if we're going to identify those and eliminate those to kind of define the methodology. So what we did for this June stat was, I believe there were 8 what we called outliers. So, and how we defined it was we took the 90th percentile and we looked back at the last few years and we looked at the average of that and then we doubled it. So it was about 7 minutes doubled is 14 minutes. So in the June data we're showing you, it does not reflect any response that would be greater than 14 minutes. Now, when we look at those 8 responses, typically they're rescues, or it could be maybe we're assisting somebody down off the I-17, so we have a unit going down the 179, that's a long response, maybe on a grass fire or a truck fire. So we kind of wanted to let you know, moving forward, we're going to start to identify those outliers and eliminate them to get a little clearer data. And we did it in June just to kind of give you a taste of the show. But August, what you should expect from this slide is we're going to go back to January And that methodology for outliers greater than 14 minutes, we're going to take out of that data from the beginning of the year. And when we look at like a snapshot, if we were going to pull data, what you want is at least 3 years of data to get good data. We still can go back 3 years and we can put that parameter in. And if we want to do comparative analysis. You know, another interesting thing is while I was kind of looking at this is when it comes to data sets too, and I'm not a statistician, but when you look at accreditation, 90th percentile, they'll say when your data set is less than 400, then there's potential for it to have up to a 5% plus or minus inaccuracy. Okay, now, that's interesting because it's placed, for example, we looked at 1 month and we only ran 200 responses. That's a low number of a data set, so your number is going to be difficult to reflect. Now, when you look at year-to-date totals and you're over 2,000, that's different, right? So, anyway, that's just something to keep in the back of your mind, but I wanted to camp for a minute on this slide and let you know we're going to start identifying those outliers. That's our methodology. Next month, you'll see this slide, and we'll go back to starting January with those outliers out and see what it looks like. In fact, what we'll do is have Carrie do comparatively, too, for the whole year from January, saying, here's what it looks like with the outliers in the data, here's what it looks like without. And it'll be a good, snapshot. Is there any questions on that? I wanted to follow up because I know the last couple of meetings we've talked about that issue.
Well, Chief, it's less of a question than just thank you. That it makes a lot of sense to do that, and it then will give all of us, including our citizens, a more proper, more accurate sense of our response time, and not so skewed by those outliers.
Yeah, and you'll find anytime we pull data and the methodology is critical. So I could show you a graph, but if I don't explain what it's representing, sometimes we can get false impressions. And then also, there's a wealth of things we can look at. This one I thought would be a good one to introduce and then start applying. For example, one thing we don't reflect here, we reflect total response time. So really, that first unit that goes on scene, that would be the end of that total response time. Okay, that could be the duty battalion chief, one person. Say we have a 5-acre brush fire, so we're sending a lot of resources. Duty chief gets out there quick, goes on scene. Well, that stops the total reflex time. Now, there's another thing that we look at in accreditation, which we're not considering yet because you really need good data. It's your effective force. So the first on scene is the total reflex time, and then when you look at a certain type of fire and you say, I need this many firefighters and these type of apparatus to be on scene working to be an effective force to it, that's another number that's really good to look at. Downstream, we're going to look at that because then it'll show not just how quickly we got on scene, but then how quickly we had enough resources on scene really to mitigate that type of incident, if that makes sense. Yes, Gene.
So that would be a second alarm, third alarm. So third alarm, the final units to arrive, that is the totality?
Well, not the totality, but the effective force. So, for example, let's say I have a car accident, and we look through and we say, well, we need a minimum of 5 firefighters to effectively mitigate that car accident. So in other words, I need a supervisor, I need an apparatus operator to block, I need so many firefighters to provide patient care. So let's say the ambulance gets on scene first. There's 2 firefighters there. Okay, that's the end of our total response time because they got on scene first. But our effective force isn't on scene until the engine gets on scene with the additional firefighters. And now we've said, hey, those firefighters can handle that emergency. So it's something we'll define and talk about, and we don't want to look at it tonight, but I'm kind of introducing, when we talk, we can look at, there's all kinds of parameters. And again, why we look at that is how are we doing in terms of are we following industry standards? Are we following best practices? Are where we need to be? And so in a lot of cases, the deeper we get in the weeds, they'll give us more information on what to evaluate. So, but it can be very good stuff, but we just have to know what we're looking at. Any more questions on that?
Anybody? Joy?
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks for taking a little time on that. And then the next one is our average again, and you can see our, from 2019 to 2020, our average response time is up slightly also. And again, I think that reflects just the environment, what's happening out there. You can see our trends. Here's our responses by station. Again, we're staying pretty consistently on the busier stations, and you can see our total responses and then how many are in district. So with that, I want to move to operations and see, Chief Coil, are you online and able to speak?
Yes, sir, and yes, sir. Oh, I guess you can't see me. Carrie won't let you see me. I won't take it personal, as long as you guys can hear me okay.
We can hear you perfectly, yep.
All right, sir. Hey, so a few things about this last week, and I'm going to start out with something that happened on June 21st, which, if by my calculations, was right after the last board meeting. But we had crews up, as you see on here, on the Magnum fire, and they blew a couple shocks out on the SUV unit, or on the UTV unit, and normally that would have prevented us from being able to keep that unit in the field, service those firefighters out there, and then realize the offset to the cost of that equipment by having them deployed out there. But 10-year Mike Sheehan and his new rig was able to go up there, take care of all of the repair and maintenance needs on the spot, and keep them in service, keep them deployed on that incident, support those firefighters, and also keep them getting paid. So kudos to Mike. You know, there's a couple other incidents I want to hit on, and one of them is just kind of globally in the last month. You know, they call it the Week of Remembrance. They're towards the end of June and the 1st of July, but it's where a lot of the fatality fires in the Southwest especially have occurred. So, you know, the Dude Fire, the Yarnell Fire, other fires. And so, you know, making it through there with everyone deployed safely, I think is something that the board and the community should be proud of, because even with the people that we had out in the field on multiple type 1 incidents and out supporting incidents of different sizes, we kept everybody safe, and they kept themselves safe by making good decisions. And so I just wanted to recognize that. You know, in addition to the multiple backcountry calls and some very large snakes that have been removed during the period between now and the last board meeting, you know, something that really kind of put that training, everything all together, was what occurred on July 7th, when there was a fire that a wildland fire that started out there by between Doe Mountain and Bear Mountain. And Battalion Chief Baker was the initial attack IC. You know, I listened to the call. I know the chief made it out there, and I'm sure you have some comments as well. But I listened to the call, coordinated with our Forest Service counterparts, and I was just exceptionally proud of the way everything went. From, you know, the IC's command to the quick deployment of resources to grab a flank of that fire and be able to keep it to clear intent, to well executed strategy and tactics. Everything, you know, everything went really well, and including that integration that we have with the Forest Service and the utilization on their dime, thankfully, of a Type 1 helicopter to suppress the head of the fire. You know, that doesn't just happen. Those events like that are a culmination of all the different times that we worked together, that we built those relationships, that we ensured that we have a common operating picture, a shared understanding about terminology. And so I just wanted to highlight that event, because that right there, I think, is what makes all that training, everything worthwhile. And it may have only been, I don't know, it was a little over 15 acres, I think, at the end of it. We're about 15 acres. But when you look at the potential of some of those fires, and especially the potential this year, when there's documentation, there's strong evidence that says that if you already have upper respiratory issues, if you already have any respiratory issues at all, actually, and then you get exposed to COVID, and you do that in an environment where there's smoke in the air, you're more likely to get sick and more likely to have a bad outcome from that. So, you know, there's been a very deliberate effort to keep fires small this year and look at more of that that short-term immediate suppression and the long-term balance of resource benefits. And what the guys did that day, I think, is a demonstration of that. And with that, I will end my operations report unless there are any questions that I could answer.
Any questions for?
I have
Coil?
one, Chief Coil, because I know you keep track of this. We've had a little bit of rain, not much, but how is it looking for the projection outward for our area in terms of wildland danger?
Yeah, thank you for that, Corey. So right now the indices are still very high. They're at the second to the highest level that they can be at. We've had some moderating weather over the last couple of days with cloud cover and a slight increase in humidity. I'm really looking forward to what that Thursday, Friday timeline into next week brings. So what they're talking about is something that's abnormal for this time of year. It's something we see more in September, but is a low that's going to be over California, and then with that high pressure off to our east and creating some of that flow out of the southeast that really enhances our moisture. So it could lead to the right dynamic here and everything for some very strong thunderstorms. I hope those thunderstorms train over the Sedona Fire District. And if they don't, then looking into next week, kind of return to that low level monsoonal activity with an eye towards that improving, increasing moisture. It's weird for this type of system, like I said, to happen this time of year. So there's a lot of kind of hesitation to commit to setting up that actual monsoonal flow that we see, that southeasterly flow. But I am cautiously optimistic that by this time next week, we'll have had significant measurable precipitation in the Sedona Fire District, and we'll be able to take a breath, at least on any of those fires that do start by lightning or other causes getting large.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other points for Chief Coil? Questions? Chief Coil, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chief Coil. So community risk reduction, you can see that our inspectors and fire marshal have kept very busy in June with 117 inspections, and the breakdown was 1 assembly, 7 business and mercantile, and then 67 fire and life safety and 40 others. So our team's out there doing an excellent job. We've slowed down again with the company inspections, just trying to manage our pandemic and protocols for COVID. And then just some notable events from the fire marshal's office: the Acacia Drive structure fire, which still was back in June, and like the brush fire that we had up near Bear Mountain, I was able to respond. And again, our firefighters are well equipped. They engaged both incidents, and they handled themselves very well and kept really losses to a minimum. The Acacia Drive fire was a tar pot that caught on fire on the driveway and then extended to a couple vehicles, vegetation, and then into the garage of the main house. So, and you'll see, I think one of the thank you cards from this month is the realtor for the house that they're trying to sell, that we, kept the fire from the garage. Now there's a little cleanup to go and smoke, but I'll tell you what, we saved that house. So great job by our firefighters. And then we had a small brush fire up in Oak Creek Canyon. I responded to that again because I was up in the canyon near it, so I was like, wow, it's right here, and I was ready to go. I thought I was going to have to engage it with my shovel, but thank goodness I didn't. But that one I do want to make a note because it was a couple of workers, really, with the work they were doing that started. So when it comes to welding, grinding, things that cause sparks, that's why we go to stage 2 fire restrictions this time of year. And you can see the note there on burn regulations. We've suspended all burn permits. We've, been in stage 2 fire restrictions here through June. So that's important because then we can hopefully minimize starts of fire, because we all know when the conditions are lined up, we can get a small start that can become a very large fire. So that was, our troops again did a fantastic job on all that. But again, just to reiterate, that's why we have our stage 2 fire restrictions, because we don't want fires to start in this type of weather that get big, where we have losses that we don't want. Any questions from CRR?
I do. Well, can you
Yes.
hear me? Oh.
Yes.
So, uh-oh, I just blanked out. Okay, first of all, I wanted to thank you, all the crew and you, to help with the Bear Mountain fire, because I have a listing there. Thank you so much, for, keeping that at a minimum, just in general, not just for the listing, but all the work you guys have done lately has been like, mwah. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, oh, right, so the workers that caused the little fire in the canyon, now that happened in 2006, it caused the La Barranca fire, so do you think that there's something we can do, speaking with the contractors and their subs, somehow can we get through to them to say, hey, please don't do this because this X, Y, and Z is going to happen? Is there a way that we can work that?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, very good question. Our fire marshal and CRR division, they do an excellent job of, as we progress in the year, to get out our press releases, to make sure that the public knows when we have fire restrictions. In the permitting process of that work, the things that we touch, the plan checks, the permits, we're very clear on instructions on what is allowed, what isn't allowed. And, it's our inspectors being out there, it's our firefighters being out there and seeing things too, and just being heads up enough to stop and say, hey, so, yeah, I think, when I sit with our fire marshal, we're always brainstorming ways to continue that good communication with press releases and our permitting process, and adding things to the permits that has special instructions. So that's a very good question, and we're going to continue to try to push that information out as much as possible and highlight that so, we don't have these occurrences. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't know if Chief Mazulis is on. If he is, he's going to comment about our EMS fleet training. Chief Mazulis, are you available?
Hey, Chief, I don't believe he's on, but if you'd like me to talk about our COVID response, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely, yeah. Chief Coil, why don't you pick that off? That would be great. Thank you.
You bet. So it's been, we've been doing really, I don't want to say we've been doing really good because that doesn't really, that's not very descriptive, right? So over the last month, we've had some different events that have kind of have touched the operations section where we've had to do some contact tracing. We've had to do some other issues just to make sure that we're keeping our workforce safe. And I got to give a huge shout out to the crews. I tasked them with some training to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to what the hazard is that we're facing and the right way to make decisions associated with contact tracing and with what some of the, as the Chief talked about earlier about how data can be, it can be informative or it can be misleading, and making sure that they understood how to use that data effectively. And with the exception of a couple people, all the rest of the 75 operational personnel have completed that work. And they're doing that in this environment, in addition to the busy calls, in addition to some mitigations that we put in place that include 100% mask wear in the stations whenever they're indoors. So we've moved up from our previous posture based on the high rate of community-based transmission that Arizona's seen, and based on, frankly, the higher risk if one of our individuals was to get sick, if they're one of those people that had a bad outcome from it, because there's not very many hospital beds left. There's not very many ICU beds left. So we have modified our behaviors both in the station and with the same rigid restrictions or on PPE outside of the station to help reduce the likelihood that something's introduced into our workforce, that we spread it to people that are at risk, and that we have anybody within our workforce that gets ill from it and has to be hospitalized. So that's, that has caused, I don't say a lot if that's the right word, but having been on wildland fires where I'm in masks 10 or 12 hours a day, all the time, it's a big deal to ask that of our crews. And not only have they been compliant, but they have been, they've kept a good attitude while they're doing it. And I just want to touch on that because it is a big deal. end of the COVID report, unless there's any questions or if Chief has anything else you'd like me to hit on.
No, any further questions for the chief? Nope.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I just want to thank you, and everybody else that's helping in the COVID situation, because we have been COVID free, knock on wood. And I think it's just because of our diligence, and I really just want to let you know how much I, as a board member with an 86-year-old mom living in my home that I take care of, I thank you for that, and I wish everybody else would follow suit, and thank you. That's it.
I'll make sure to pass that on. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chief Coil, and again, I think we're doing a fantastic job managing an impossible task, right? None of us have lived through a pandemic, but we are now, we're figuring it out. So thank you, Chief Coil, for that update. You can see, just to highlight that picture, that is our fabulous Mike Sheehan mechanic. And that was what happened, what Chief Coil referred to when our UCV, he had to go out and do a field repair there, get the parts, go up, and just what great service, right? Just our training, we're continuing to maintain the essential training that we need to. You can see we logged an additional 830 hours of training this last month. Are there any questions on training or EMS or fleet?
Nope, I think we're all good.
Very good. So we'll go to administration. Director of Administrative Services, Heidi Robinson, if she is online.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Excellent. Oh, I love this graphic. So nobody celebrated the 4th of July. It was no events. So we're just updating our upcoming events or activities. The fire chief did let you know that we are going to look at recognizing our annual award recipients. In lieu of being able to have a celebration, we don't want to go too long without honoring them. So we will do that, and then we'll still be trying to work on our celebration and appreciation of our employees. There'll be certainly a lot to appreciate after all of this time. Our SFD buildings do remain closed to the public, and our team does continue to work remotely with our limited in-person office hours and a staggered work schedule to make sure that we're limiting contact with each other, and we will be under review for the continuation of that in August. For our staffing updates, we had reopened the IT tech position. We have, as of yesterday, 33 applicants pending for that, and is actively recruiting through the end of this month, so through July 31st, and then we'll begin that review process again in a multi-phase fashion. And thank you to Bob Motes. He has reworked some of our testing and questions for this next round, trying to make sure we get the applicants that we're looking for. So we're hopeful about that. Because of our reduced staffing and things like that, we don't have a lot else to report on administration, so we'll just move right in to our mental health moment. And in this case, this month, it's mindful approaches to cope with stress. So as the remote working and social distancing, physical distancing, closed venues and things of that nature, as that continues to go on, stress levels are showing to increase. So coping mechanisms that you might have had for the short term may not be working for the long term. So we just want to kind of address that and let you know you're not alone, that nearly 70% of workers in studies are reporting that the pandemic is the most stressful time of their entire career. And then many feel that way also in their personal life. Since each of us copes with stress differently, we just thought we'd throw out a few tips that might help you, whether it's caused by work, COVID-19 worries, or just your everyday life. We all have that going on as well. So one, make self-care a priority. Make sure you do things you enjoy. We tend to let those things go when we think that we don't deserve them, and you most certainly do. Two, create a resilience routine. So make sure to get exercise, talk to friends regularly, or talk to a mental health professional if you feel like you do want to take advantage of that, do so. And practice relaxation techniques. 3, be mindful. Sometimes just focusing, your head can kind of spin, and just focusing and slowing down, looking at one thing at a time and connecting with the fact that you feel a certain way, and that's okay, can just make that better all around. And then my favorite, number 4, is to laugh. Why don't you be a little bit more forgiving of yourself? Try to enjoy a moment and spread the laughter around. We may not be hugging, but we can certainly share a laugh, and we can do that virtually as well as across 6 feet apart from each other across the room. So take care of you, take care of each other, and if you have any questions or comments, now's the time.
Any questions or comments for Heidi?
No joke.
Yep, I think we're good. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief?
Thank you, Director Robinson. So, to finish off the Chief's report, a note on the strategic plan. So, I believe we have an upcoming meeting here in August as we continue to refine and improve and update our plan. We've condensed the previous 19 goals down to 9 goals, and then about half of those we've developed strategies under, and we're going to finish off those strategies and then update action items, and we're going to keep moving forward on it. So I think, in general, the plan is going very well. Station 4 construction, we are moving forward with our feasibility study. We've identified a scope of work with a local vendor, and we had a couple follow-up meetings with them here in June, and they're developing a phase 1 feasibility study that we'll look at. And if everything looks good, then we'll walk into a phase 2, which will be more in-depth, just to make sure, again, what I'm learning too is the site to rebuild Station 4 on the existing site as is, it's very complex. So we know we've had different easement with the carriers that we have on our tower, and we've been trying to fix and update those, and the property's an odd shape, and it's on a grade, so very challenging, but we're going to walk that down. So the idea again with the feasibility component is, let's make sure we've identified all those issues so that we can count the costs on the front side, and we don't get into a project where we go, ooh, we didn't think about that. So it's a little bit of a slow roll, but again, what we're trying to do is have some confidence as we move forward in that property. Unless anyone here can find another larger property for us that's flat in the area. But
There is none.
a little side note, I know. We'll look, but we'll keep our eyes open, you never know. That's the update on Station 4. Purchase orders between 10 and 25,000. We had one for $10,537.50 for our annual service agreement for patient care record management system. And then we've had a couple donations recently. One was the purchase where we took, it was a very, very generous donation that we were able to purchase Green Mountain grills for all 5 fire stations. And there's a lot of neat components of those grills. One is they can time out. So, as a firefighter, you're cooking, you're barbecuing, and then the alarm goes off and you go respond. So across the country, we won't point fingers or name agencies, but there's an instance where firefighters inadvertently left the barbecue on. And of course, it's always another company from another station responding to that station putting out the barbecue fire. And they have teasing rights for the rest of the year. But we were able to avoid that. Even there's with a phone app where that firefighter on the phone can go, ooh, we left it on. With the phone, turn the barbecue off. So, but they're really nice. They're barbecues, they're smokers. I think it's a nice addition to some of the older equipment we had. It's not something that we would normally budget for, but with the donation from the community, it's really nice to, enhance our opportunity out there. And then another gracious donation here from Lewis and Rosemary Toronto for $200. I think the thank you letters, it is one of the thank you letters. But, from time to time we get these donations, and then we, staff really looks at how we can use those to best advantage and really, bless the district by someone being very gracious and thankful to us. So, in terms of our public outreach and communication with our social media, we had 294 new page likes, which is a 36% increase. Our post-reach was 115,000, that's a 9% increase. Our engagement, 42,300, that was also a 9% increase. So we had a lot of interest in our social media and the information we're putting out, and there's great information on there, on snakes, on heat, on wildland, on fire restrictions, so on smoke, when we get those smoke drift from fires outside of the district, we always get calls and inquiries, so it's nice to have a mechanism to get some information out. The most engagement was the Granite Mountain Hot Shot anniversary, which we know happened here this last month, and then their snake removal and our wildland deer breakdown, which is another great little note. So again, please take some time to read through the thank you letters. Again, the one was from structure fire. We had others from medical response and rescue. It just shows you when we have someone that takes the time to say, hey, not just thank you on scene, but you really helped me or my loved one. It just highlights really the work we're doing day to day. So thank you. That, unless there are other questions, that ends the fire chief's report.
Any other questions for the chief? Chief, thank you very much for your presentation and also for those barbecues that we got to the fire stations. Again, that's huge, and I'm sure we sent a letter out to that company thanking them for that contribution, so as well as all the others. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion, possible action, review, and approval of the master agreement for joint use of facility space between Arizona Public Service, APS, and the Sedona Fire District. Chief Troutwine, in conjunction with Bill.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially what this is it's going to be an agreement between APS and Sedona Fire District to exchange space on towers. So it would be very helpful for them to have some space on our tower, Station 3, and then for us to have space up in Indian Point, up at Oak Creek Canyon. That'll improve our communications there. So this was, I think, a mutually beneficial opportunity between APS and Sedona Fire District to exchange space on towers. So really, if you think about it, it's a no-cost item. I mean, we're going to keep the repair and maintenance up on our Station 3 tower, and they're going to do the same on their tower. So obviously, we have incurred costs normally, but to exchange space, I think this is a great way to do business because it's beneficial to both partners, and again, it improves our operation and their operation. So I don't think I have anything else unless Bill had anything from the legal perspective. It's been reviewed. Right, so legal's reviewed and approved, staff is also. So my recommendation to the board would be that we approve this.
Okay. Any other comments before we go to motion?
I just had a question, Chief. Where is Indian Point?
If
Hey,
you look
Chief.
under the internal process perspective,
Yeah.
it says right here, it says, it's U.S. Forest approved and permitted process to build a radio location at Indian Point. It says right here, it's just south of Slide Rock to Grasshopper Point. So it's in the South Oak Creek Canyon area, and hopefully from Slide Rock south to Grasshopper Point is going to help improve our communications in the canyon.
Very good.
Chief Coil, did you have something to add to that?
I was just gonna, I know the chief's not familiar with all the common landmarks yet, or at least I wouldn't be if I was in. And I was just gonna say that where Munns Canyon goes up, where it splits out Oak Creek Canyon, if you just went north of there, according above, kind of near where that big waterfall forms, it's about in there, and it's got a good look down the canyon and back up it as well. So it should help with our radio coverage in a lot of the areas that we've already identified as dead spots.
Okay, super. I appreciate the fact that it's a 25-year agreement that we won't have to revisit. I mean, I may never see it revisited. So, but 25 years is a good stay. So, with that said, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion to approve this agreement between APS and Sedona Fire District is approved. Thank you. thanks for all the work with staff and with legal also. Last item on our agenda is the board member items. And again, this is the opportunity for board members to address those things that they may have come in contact with as it relates to the Sedona Fire Districts since our last meeting. And we'll start over here with Al, if you'd like to begin.
Well, being a busybody as I am up at the airport, I was able to get the big Sikorsky helicopter in the front page of the newspaper. That wasn't the plan. It was just to get the newspaper to it, and they created a nice little splash and gave recognition to the crew of the response helicopter, that how they were involved in observing the fire from the position on top of the mountain. They could see smoke, and so that was fun. And it also demonstrated to Ed that it's good to have people that know other people. Because sitting right in front of him, I took my phone and texted the photographer. 5 minutes later, he walked right in to the airport, and then Ed took charge.
Perfect. Thank you.
That was fun.
Corey?
Yeah. Well, it's been a quiet month for me. I think this shelter, this COVID has slowed down my connection with our community, and also with our budget being passed. I thought we could take a small break from discussions with the chief, give him a chance to not to have to do that. So that I really don't have too much to report.
Okay, super. Trey?
Well, I did have communications with the chief, just for our monthly discussions, and I consulted in regards to Station 4 because I have a lot of, I think, decent input as to how we can, make it work the best for us as well as for everybody else around us. I oddly enough have gotten a lot of calls, and while walking my dogs and so forth, I've been getting a lot of questions just, about how we're doing, the district, COVID, and so I've just been answering questions the best that I can, and mostly chirping them to the chief, sorry. But, people are calling and coming up to me, and it makes me feel good because I feel that they're trusting me as, in my elected position, and I feel happy to be able to respond with my informed responses. And then, of course, chirping to the chief. But it's been a good month for that.
Good, thank you.
Gene?
Thank you. Wednesday, July 15th, my wife and I were returning from Flagstaff down 17. And a Arizona State Patrol unit turned his red lights on behind me and zoomed past. And he was going quite fast. And many, many miles south of that moment, the traffic came to a halt. There was a truck fire and truck and tractor and trailer rather, and a brush fire associated with it, south of Fox Ranch. And so they turned everyone around, trucks, cars, hundreds of them, and sent us back north 20 miles. It was 20 miles back to the 89 southbound through the canyon, and so on. You can imagine bumper to bumper going through the canyon. And my concern was, of course, that should any kind of an event occur within the canyon, a fire, a rescue, whatever, it would be extremely difficult for a response. I got on the phone and intermittent signals up there, and was fortunate enough to get a hold of Chief Coil, and he got a hold of me. He came right back at me, and I wanted to notify him of the situation because there were hundreds of cars behind me. So Arizona ADOT is responsible on Highway 17, and And in addition, in the canyon, I believe it's a contractor carrying out the construction for ADOT. Well, they did a great job on 17, but the construction was still going on in the canyon. And so they were having bird dogs bring people back and forth in one lane and so on and so forth. So you can imagine what could have happened. So I don't know if we have any effect on ADOT and their ability to communicate with their contractors to shut it down as far as the construction goes in the canyon if an event like that again occurs on 17 south or northbound. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. I'd like to say that this past month was a little bit of a slower month, but for me, it was as it always is, where I get a chance to talk with the chief several times a week, and at times with legal a couple of times. But what I'm also hearing is that the rest of the board is also communicating with you on various items from time to time, and even on scheduled phone calls, which in the past hadn't happened before. Maybe a long time ago, but as of recent, until we started this up again, it's refreshing to see that we've got that communication going again. I take it for granted because I just think I'm supposed to call. But we also talk about things as part of whatever a presentation may be for the up and coming meeting. So, you know, I probably had 2 to 3 phone calls a week for the past 4 weeks since our last meeting with the chief each and every week, and always very productive. And with that, I'm very pleased with that. So with that said, that was my dealings for the month, and hopefully the community can see that we just don't come up here once a month and talk about what happened last month, but we are actively involved and engaged with the fire district, the fire chief, and the community to make this a better place. So with that said, that is my report for the end of the month. With that said, unless there are any other points. I'm sorry, hold on. No.
Okay.
But with that said, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Like how cool it is.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Gabe. Thank you very much.
Gabe. Good to hear from
Chief
you.
Coil and anybody else who's on the line, thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys take care.
I just want to congratulate them, but you're right.